It's 11:59 at Gun Owners Radio, and this is the Penn Patriot, music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, and another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind American lines, this is your song.
Gun Owners Radio. We make activism easy. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for listening to Gun Owners Radio. Big announcement from Gun Owners Radio. We are now over 10,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for everybody who has watched. Especially thank you to the 10,000 people who subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, take time right now. Subscribe for us. And then, don't keep us a secret. Let everybody know about us. But you guys did it. You got us to 10,000. Thank you so much. Sky's the limit. We're going to keep going. Today we have another packed show. It's going to be awesome. We're talking to Charlie Cook from Riding Shotgun with Charlie. He's actually at the NRA Annual Meeting where they're having a huge floor show, a huge gun show. We're going to talk to him about that and a couple other exciting things. We're going to talk to a former Special Ops Marine, and he's going to talk about his training and curriculum and what he's learned in the Marine Corps. And then we're going to give you a briefing. This should actually be very interesting on, it's going to be a briefing on the California assault weapons ban. I think it's time for a tutorial. It's been a few years since we've gone over it, and I've gotten a lot of questions about it. So we're going to do that and a whole lot more on Gun Owners Radio.
Gun Owners Radio is coming to you from deep, deep, deep within our Gun Owners Radio bunker, located within the secure walls of Discount Gun Mart on Marina Boulevard. Check them out at discountgunmart.com. And have you seen our website? More important, are you getting our emails? You have got to check out our website at gunownersradio.com and sign up to follow us. Also, we are over 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, so please keep that going and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Help us get the word out about your rights and the Second Amendment. GunOwnersRadio.com. Don't keep us a secret.
There you go.
Now it's time.
What's it time for, Dakota?
For our Gun Truth of the Week.
Gun Truth of the Week. Okay, police-sponsored gun buybacks. A 2019 Los Angeles buyback collected over 1,000 firearms, but local reports estimated only a small percentage were even potentially crime-related based on preliminary police checks. Based on some studies and reports, as few as 1 to maybe 5% of guns collected at U.S. police gun buyback programs are typically possibly maybe linked to criminal activity, with some variation by location and program. In rare cases, this might be as much as 10% in very, very, very high crime areas, but higher figures are not well documented. More recently, findings in 2021, there was a working paper by the National Bureau of Economic Research, or the NBER, and it was authored by Toshio Ferzares, Joseph Sabia, and Mark Anderson. It's credible evidence that gun buybacks may increase gun crime in the areas where the gun buyback was conducted. And the study also confirms that gun buybacks do not reduce suicides, do not reduce homicides, which is consistent with other research. And it also argued that resources spent on buybacks are often completely wasted. So that is your gun truth of the week. So, Dakota, gun buybacks. What are your thoughts on gun buybacks?
That's an interesting question because I do have some thoughts.
Lay it on me.
I think in general, guns that are taken to gun buybacks are guns that would have never been used in a crime and are generally law-abiding citizens who maybe inherited a gun and don't want it, or have never shot before and don't know how to use it, or they, their husband passed away and they just got all these guns that they don't want. But those guns were never going to get in the hands of a gangbanger, right? So I think in general, all of the media around gun buybacks being this great thing for society and it's making our community safer, that's not true. I don't think. I think there's a very small percentage, like that study said, of guns that, maybe your, brother committed a crime with this gun and now it's at your house. And so you're going to go turn it in because you're like, I don't want this criminal gun in my house.
You're getting rid of evidence.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know if it's really so much that the criminals themselves are like, I don't want a free gun anymore. Like that's probably not how these guns are getting bought back.
There's so many little problems with what's going on with gun buybacks.
Yes.
Starting with the name. They're not buying it back because it wasn't theirs to begin with. You know what I mean? So this whole thing is just built on a foundation of propaganda.
Yes.
They're not stopping crime. They're not preventing crime. They're not preventing homicide or suicide like these actual studies, not the propaganda, biased organizations, not what they want you to believe, but the actual scientific surveys where they actually look into this. That being said, the propaganda part, the PR part's important, because they use these gun buybacks to let society know,
how dangerous guns are.
Which couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
So that part I absolutely hate. But I had an interesting conversation with a high-ranking person in law enforcement here locally in San Diego, and I'm not gonna, I don't want. It's not a big deal. They didn't give me secrets or anything like that, but. We were talking about gun buybacks, and he's actually a gun guy, a legit gun guy. He's a professional law enforcement, but he's an absolute gun enthusiast. And he was telling me, on the very rare occasion that a valuable firearm shows up, they absolutely try to educate him. Like, hey, Mrs. So and so, I realized that your husband left this and he passed away or whatever. You could get money for this, and he says that without fail in all the years that he's done these gun buybacks, if people are there doing a gun buyback, their attitude is like, look, I just want to get rid of this. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go. I don't care if I'll go, I'll take the $100 gift certificate. I don't care about the gift certificate. Just take this out of my hands. For whatever reason, they have kind of this irrational or maybe it is rational, but they have this bias against owning the firearm. But he also said that, 99.9% of the firearms that show up at these gun quote unquote buybacks are trash. They're absolute garbage. No one's using them. They're not effective. It's a pipe with something that looks like might have been a trigger kind of attached. They really aren't. Firearms. They really aren't doing anything. It's just for show.
Well, it's interesting because you said that most people just want to get rid of them once they're there. Yeah. And I think probably for a lot of people who aren't familiar with firearms and who don't want to own it, there is this piece of fear of like, well, I already did the emotionally difficult job of packing up this gun, putting it in my car, painstakingly, nervously shaking on my drive over to the police station. So no, I'm not going to elongate this negative experience for myself. Right. But I wonder if the initial step, if it was clear, if people knew, instead of going to a gun buyback, you could just walk into an FFL. Well, now they just do that painstaking drive to an FFL instead of the sheriff's department or the local PD or the whatever, and maybe they make more money for the gun. So I think some of it is a marketing thing. People just don't know what options are out there for them. Yeah,
and that's the challenge. And I got to tell you, right now, I'm in the middle of evaluating, the amount of political capital, the amount of time, that a volunteer or an FFL would spend. Is this an effective step of, combating these gun buybacks, or should we just educate on the front end? So like you said, rather than make that drive to a gun buyback, they make that drive to an FFL.
Right.
But none of those people are watching this show.
Right, exactly.
So you and I could educate, and we're just preaching to the choir. So I'm curious, if you're listening, if you're watching this, I'd love to hear your thoughts on gun buybacks and how, this show or an organization like San Diego County Gun Owners, what should we do? How should we combat it?
Yeah, I think one thing to remember here, because you're right, they're not listening to our show, the people who are going to sell a gun to a gun buyback. But if all they've ever seen is a flyer from the sheriff's department saying, you know, $100 gift card for a long gun or $50 gift card for a handgun or whatever, right? If that's the only thing they've ever seen, they might have no idea that they could get 5 times that or, you know, 10 times that at the FFL. They just don't know. So I think a piece of it is, you know, we can advertise these gun buybacks, like the, you know, the sheriff's office or the local PD can advertise it, but they should, you know, make it a little bit more clear, I think, that if you go to our gun buyback, the only benefit of that is that you don't have to show an ID and we're not going to ask you any questions. The only people that it benefits, honestly, are people who shouldn't have the gun or shouldn't be selling the gun or whatever, or couldn't sell the gun to an FFL.
They're getting rid of their evidence.
Exactly. So let's use it for what it's intended for, which is that. And everybody else who wants to sell a gun, you know, let's funnel them into the FFL world. But the question, I guess, is how do we do that?
How do we reach out to that person?
And how important is it? And, you know, all of those things. I don't know.
So anyway, all right. That's your gun truth. That's your discussion on gun buybacks. Now we're going to do something pretty thorough in the Q&A section. You know, every week I get questions and I try to give good answers. This past week I've gotten a ton of the same questions. And it was some variation of magazines used with rifles in California in light of what's going on with the Freedom Week magazines, to where, you know, people who possessed magazines that held more than 10 rounds during Freedom Week in 2019 can still possess them legally, while the Duncan case makes its way to the Supreme Court. And I didn't think that this was going to be an issue. I didn't think I was going to get a lot of questions on this, but I got a lot of questions from people. Because when I'm thinking normal capacity magazine, I'm thinking like a 15-round Glock 19 magazine, you know. A lot of people said, hey, wait a minute, can I now put a 30-round magazine in my AR pattern rifle with this decision? I thought, okay, it's time. We got to go and review the assault weapons ban, quote unquote, assault weapons ban in California and touch on that. It's been a while. I got a lot of questions that led me to believe that, hey, this is a good time to do a refresher course on it. So I'm going to show you 2 types of rifles, 2 types of ways to comply with California law and own the most common sporting self-defense rifle in the nation, which is an AR pattern rifle. There are other ways to do it. There are other opportunities, but these are the 2 most common. And you can take what I've said here and apply it to a bunch of other different situations. Now, I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice. Any legal advice that you need should be given by a properly licensed attorney in the state of California, who is not only an expert in California law, but also an expert in firearms law. So take that for what it is. I'm just going to give you the best information I have. And again, it's not legal advice. So basically, if you want to own a rifle and comply with California state law, you don't want to run afoul of their assault weapons ban, which could turn you into a felon. So if you want to own a rifle, go down to the shop and buy it and use it for self-defense or home protection or sporting or whatever you want to do. First thing is, the assault weapons ban only applies to center fire semi-automatic rifles. Okay, so it's got to be, the caliber has to be center fire. So it doesn't apply to rimfire. So if your rifle is 22 long, that's a rimfire cartridge, doesn't apply. If your rifle is bolt action or manual action and it's not semi-automatic, doesn't apply. Now, if you have a rifle that is center fire and semi-automatic, then the next question is, does it have certain features that they've banned? I'm going to show you an example of what these features are. So we have a couple different examples here. There are 2 ways to easily and most commonly comply with the law. Okay, so the first thing is, if it's semi-automatic, okay, and it's a center fire cartridge, then it can't have what's called a flash suppressor at the end of the barrel. This is not a flash suppressor. This is a muzzle brake. Okay, a muzzle brake redirects the gases, so it helps you deal with the recoil. A flash suppressor helps minimize the flash, so that basically it keeps you more concealed. How do you know the difference? Well, your first clue is going to be in the name. If you're buying it, it says, hey, it's got a muzzle brake, it's a muzzle brake. If it says, hey, it's got a flash suppressor, it's probably a flash suppressor. The next thing that they're looking for is, does it have a foregrip? A foregrip would be a grip that hangs down below the barrel for your offhand. Does it have a foregrip? The next thing they're looking for is, does it have a pistol grip? A pistol grip goes down below the action. I'm not going to get too specific here. I really just want to touch on the highlights here. But basically, this is a pistol grip. Pistol grip is exactly what you think a pistol grip is, okay? The next thing is, does it have a telescoping stock? So a stock that goes, can be made longer or collapse, okay? If it's semi-automatic, okay? If it's center fire, then it can't have any of those features, okay? So there are two ways to comply with that. Oh, the other one is a magazine. It can't have a detachable magazine. Okay, that's another important point. And that's where what we wanted to talk about is, with the magazine law, everything that's going on recently. So there's a couple of different things that you can do. First off, you can have an AR style rifle like this is that doesn't have a detachable magazine. In other words, it has a magazine that stays in the firearm, which this doesn't have the magazine in it right now, but it stays in the firearm unless you actually break open the action, okay? And to break open the action, okay, so you're basically disassembling the firearm in essence, okay? So if you push this button, this particular product is called a juggernaut. If you push this button, then it actually breaks open the action, which you can kind of see.
That's as much as you could.
Yeah, it's just a little tiny bit, but you can kind of see that little. So now the action is broken open, and then you can actually put a magazine inside the firearm, and then boom, put the action back together. Okay, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to put the magazine in there. But the other thing is, and what's important to people who have questions about the magazine law is, it has to be a 10-round magazine or less. It can't be over a 10-round magazine. So let's just review. So this is a center fire semi-automatic rifle. It has a fixed magazine. In other words, the magazine cannot come out unless you disassemble the rifle, and this has the juggernaut, right? So you disassemble the rifle by pushing this, and the action separates, and then you can put the fixed magazine in. The fixed magazine has to have 10 rounds, okay? And then you can have the evil features. You can have the pistol grip, you can have the telescoping stock, you can have a foregrip, and that's how you can comply with the law. That's one way to comply with the law. But the important thing is here, in light of the Duncan decision, is that magazine still has to be 10 rounds or less. So that's version 1. That is the fixed magazine version of how to comply with California law when it comes to specifically an AR pattern rifle, but any semi-automatic centerfire rifle. The other option, this is to, it's the same looking AR, right? It's still an AR pattern, but this doesn't have any features. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it's semi-automatic. It's center fire, just like before. It actually has, this one has a detachable magazine. You can just push the magazine release button. It works like normal, but it doesn't have a pistol grip. See, this fin right here prevents you from wrapping your thumb around, and because you can't wrap your thumb around, it's not a pistol grip, okay? It doesn't have a collapsible stock. You can't move this stock. It's fixed in this position. Correct on that? Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure. Okay, so this is feature. It doesn't have a foregrip, okay? And it has a muzzle grip, not a flash hider. In this configuration, the assault weapons ban doesn't apply to you in California because you don't have any of the evil features. Therefore, you can put any sized magazine you want in this type of rifle. You can put a 10 round in, you can put a 30 round in. So you could put this 30 rounder into this rifle, and because it's featureless, you're not violating the law. Okay? So just to recap, you have the fixed magazine with the features, but only a 10 round magazine. Or you have a featureless rifle, and you can use any size magazine that you want. Okay, so any size in a featureless, only 10 rounds in a fixed magazine. Now, if you have magazines like a 15 round magazine for your Glock or something like that for a pistol, you're totally fine. You can use whatever you want in your Glock. Now, we did create a 2-page graphic on this, and we have it up on our website that tells you what you can and can't do. But I wanted to go over and show you how this decision and how Freedom Week magazines affect the California assault weapon ban. Okay? What do you think, Dakota? Anything you want to add? Anything I missed?
No, I don't think so. So my rifle has the Juggernaut system. I prefer being able to get a good grip on the gun. I don't like how the fins feel. I don't like not being able to get my thumb behind the gun. And I also, because I, am teaching a lot and working with a lot of different people, I like having the adjustable stock, because it's tough to, have somebody who's smaller than me and somebody who's larger than me use the same gun when it's fixed in place. So I prefer the Juggernaut option, even though it does require that kind of break open effect to separate that upper and the lower in order to drop the magazine. For the mag release button to work, it's got to be open. But besides that, it adds, I don't know, half a second to your reload time. It's not very impactful as far as like overall shootability. And I like that the rest of the gun feels the same as a normal AR-15 that you would shoot anywhere else.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to training.
Yeah.
If you pick a system, if you pick a platform, if you pick a pattern, whatever, and then train with it, I think that everyone can get comfortable with some legal option out there.
Yeah.
Now, I want to emphasize, there's a lot of things I didn't talk about. There are a lot of different options I didn't talk about.
Yes.
There's a lot of history between today and when these assault weapons bans, in quotes, assault weapons bans, first happened. There's a lot of history that I didn't talk about. What I really wanted to do was do a quick demonstration and show people who aren't familiar what the difference is between a fixed magazine and a featureless rifle, and the fact that you can only use a 10-round magazine in a fixed magazine, semi-automatic rifle, but you can use any size magazine in a featureless. Again, you had to have possessed these magazines during Freedom Week in 2019 in order for them to be legal anyway. But I wanted to go over that and make sure that everybody understood. Like I said, it'd been a while. A lot of people have purchased ARs in the last 5 years, since Freedom Week. So there's a lot of confusion, and that's totally fine. If you have questions, ask questions. There's no reason you should be an expert in these ridiculous laws. They're totally counterintuitive. They don't make any sense at all. They don't make you any safer. They don't make the gun safer. They don't help stop crime. They don't exist in most places in the country, like overwhelmingly most places in the country. It's just a very few places, a very few states in California or in the United States that these ridiculous laws apply. And this, what I was just talking about, specifically is just for California. So there's no reason you should understand this, So if you're thinking to yourself, gosh, I didn't know that, or I'm confused, or I still have questions, you should. These are dumb, goofy laws. So reach out, let us know, talk to, a trusted source. Feel free to email us, whatever. But I wanted to go over that and make sure that you had the information that you needed to be successful. And I hope that's helpful. So that's your Q&A.
All right, this segment is our legal and legislative segment where we tell you what you need to know from the courts and from the legislators. Remember, we are not lawyers and nothing we say is legal advice. Our sponsor, John Dillon, is a lawyer who has been helping people fight GVROs. Those are gun violence restraining orders and much more. If you know somebody that's had their rights taken away without due process, give John a call. His website is DylanLawGP.com, and his phone number is 760-642-7150.
So, is your Glock now illegal to possess? Well, no, we're going to talk about it, but it's getting closer and closer to that reality. They're making it harder, they being Sacramento, to own a Glock, the most popular self-defense tool, the most effective self-defense tool in the United States. So they're making it harder for you to own it unless you're a cop, unless you're the government, or unless you're a criminal. This isn't going to apply to you. It isn't going to help you. It's only going to apply to the criminals. So really, Glocks are becoming harder and harder for law-abiding men and women to be used as a self-defense tool. But criminals, they're still good to go. So let's talk about exactly what's going on. There's a bill, AB 1127, and it's making its way through Sacramento. In essence, what it's going to do is it's going to make it illegal for a dealer to sell a Glock or similar pistol. There's this illegal piece, we talked about it last week, but it's a little piece that you can put on your Glock. You have to make it. It's not like they sell it in stores. It's this do-it-yourself. And some of the older Glock models, you can attach it to the Glock, and then it'll actually turn it into a full auto Glock. Some of the newer Glocks, they have a piece in there that prevents this do-it-yourself illegal device from being installed. But Sacramento took this as an opportunity to introduce a bill to further erode your Second Amendment rights by making it so that any firearm that can accept this illegal do-it-yourself home manufactured piece that turns it into a full auto makes the entire gun illegal for law-abiding citizens to buy from a dealer. Most extreme way to handle this that I can even think of. It's a very extreme anti-gun law. Now, this bill, when a bill is introduced, it goes through various committees. There are a bunch of different subcommittees in the Assembly and the Senate, and they discuss it. Specifically, is this legal? Is this constitutional? How much money is this going to cost? Where they talk about specific parts of this bill and how it will affect the state. Most recently, it was in the Judiciary Committee, where they basically talk about, hey, does it pass legal muster? And it actually passed that committee, which is unreal. Now, the anti-gunners outnumber the pro-Second Amendment folks in that committee. Am I surprised that it's passed? Well, I'm not shocked, but it's still pretty surprising that anyone can make the case that AB 1127, if implemented, would be constitutional. Now, I wanted to show you a quick video. Sam Paredes from Gun Owners of California, who is an awesome guy and does a fantastic job. He gave a speech to this committee and talked about just how bad this bill is, and I wanted you to see from him directly because he did such a great job.
Mr. Chairman and members, Sam Paredes representing Gun Owners of California and the California Rifle and Pistol Association. We heard this bill, and this bill was heard in the Assembly Public Safety Committee, and I want to point out a couple of things that were said today in the testimony. First of all, these things are already illegal. It is illegal to convert any firearm into full auto. It is illegal to possess, under federal law, felony. So criminals are somehow able to acquire these things, but law-abiding citizens are not. Now, mind you, this is pre-crime. You're making something that is already illegaler, on the hope that you're going to somehow make criminals comply with the law. Nothing can be further from the truth. Also, this is the Judiciary Committee. It is very important that you understand that under the Heller versus Washington, D.C., the Supreme Court said that anything that is in common use for lawful purposes cannot be banned. It is unconstitutional. That's what they said for the federal government. Then, 2 years later, in McDonald versus Chicago, the court came back and said that is so important, we're going to apply it to the states. Then Caetano said 200,000 stun guns was common use. We have millions of Glocks. And then the Bruin decision came and said that when the Second Amendment is implicated, that it is the burden of the government to prove that the law they are considering has some source of reference with the text, the history, and tradition of gun laws in America. This law does not. And the one big concern we have is the exemption of DOJ from the Administrative Protection Act, Procedures Act, which means they can do whatever they want, any way they want, and why they want. And finally, I will close with this, and I appreciate the indulgence of the extra time, Mr. Chairman. This will go to court, and we will win. We are winning on this issue in other courts in the country. Ultimately, it is going to be the taxpayers of the state of California that are going to have to pay our attorneys when we ultimately win this issue in courts. That's a fact. That's a fact. Thank you.
Thank
For
you.
these
Yeah.
reasons, we
No,
oppose
I
this
appreciate
measure.
there was just one witness.
So that's Sam Prentice. And as always, that guy is spot on and right. He's such a great guy. Gun Owners of California is so fortunate to have him. We're all fortunate to have him as well. Wonderful, wonderful guy. Explained it extremely well. Now, like I said, there's a lot of anti-gunners on that committee. There's a lot of anti-gunners in the assembly in general, and of course in the state senate as well. Sacramento is not friendly. They're very hostile to gun owners. But there are a few pro-Second Amendment folks, and there were two people that voted against this. I wanted to bring your attention to one person who wouldn't vote against it. She's a Republican in Orange County. Her name's Diane Dixon. I don't know why she wouldn't vote against this extreme anti-gun bill. I called her office and asked for an explanation, and the staffer said they wouldn't give me an explanation. They just said that Assembly Member Diane Dixon, who's the vice chair of the Judiciary Committee, will have an opportunity to vote on this bill again. So they wouldn't explain her vote. All they said is, hey, she's going to vote on this thing again. Well, Diane Dixon is actually running for County Board of Supervisors in Orange County as a Republican. So I think we need to let her know how we feel about her not voting against 1127, AB 1127. So I need you to, we're going to have a link to email her in this video. So email her immediately and tell her how frustrated you are that she didn't vote against AB 1127. Call her office and let them know how frustrated you are that she didn't vote against AB 1127. That's 949-798-7221. So you want to encourage her to vote against AB 1127. We need to make sure that she understands she's going to have a real hard time getting elected for anything in Orange County, in California, in that district, if she continues to ignore or take advantage of or take for granted Second Amendment people in her district. So please email her and call her right now. Make sure that she gets on the right page. We have a rare opportunity to let her know exactly how we feel about this. Okay, so that's AB 1127. So the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. Of course, all adults have rights like voting, religion, and speech. Your right to self-defense is no different. It's no less a right. Iowa took huge steps to do what government is supposed to do, and that's protect the rights of adults by making sure that 18, 19, and 20-year-olds can own and carry arms. Now, what they did is they passed a law. So there's actually a lot of, I think there are 6 lawsuits. I could be wrong, but I think there are actually 6 lawsuits just by Firearms Policy Coalition that are making sure that 18, 19, and 20-year-olds can own a firearm, can purchase a firearm, can carry a firearm for self-defense. Once you are the age of majority, or 18 in this country, you're an adult, which means that the government's job is to protect your rights. And for some reason, the right to keep and bear arms is always kind of treated like this second-class right. Like, well, look, speech is important, religion is important, voting is important, assembling, all that's important. The press, that's extremely important. But your Second Amendment, your right to keep and bear arms, your right to self-defense, not as important. So maybe you're thinking to yourself, hey, I'm 18, or I'm not 18, I'm not 19, I'm not 20. Why should I care about this? Well, the reality is that putting pressure on governments and putting pressure on the courts to respect your Second Amendment rights for all adults, strengthens the Second Amendment across the board. Plus, we want to make sure that people who are 18, 19, and 20 aren't being marginalized in society. They have every right to be able to defend themselves, to be able to protect themselves. I know when this subject comes up, frequently people say, hey, we take 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, we give them rifles, tanks, and helicopters, and we say, hey, go to war on our behalf. But then when they come back, they can't defend themselves. They can't protect themselves. They're not trusted enough to own or buy or carry a firearm. Well, I'm very happy to say that the state of Iowa said, look, we're going to codify this. We're going to turn this into law and protect the rights of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. Breitbart wrote about it. The governor signs the bill. And now the Second Amendment rights of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds in the state of Iowa are protected, thanks to the pressure by Second Amendment groups, including FPC. That's good news. It affects us all. So I wanted to let everybody know. And I think that's everything you need to know this week, legislatively or from the courts. Those are your bills and lawsuits.
And that is your Second Amendment legal update for the week.
Okay, so now that we told you everything that's happening in the courts, all the laws, all the bills that are being introduced, everything that they're trying to do to frustrate you, make you mad, and take away your Second Amendment rights, now it's time to tell you what you can do about it. This is our deployment section. It's brought to you by Red, White, and Badass Brew. Go to rwbbcoffee.com. RWBB Coffee, buy coffee. You can use GOR, and you'll get 15% off and buy it from Red, White, and Badass Brew. They'll deliver it to you. Delicious coffee right here in San Diego County. Big supporters of the Second Amendment. Okay, so what can you do? Well, there's a couple things you can do to get involved. Like I said, we make activism easy, and your rights and being an American, not a spectator sport. This is the country of the self-governed. You have to be involved. You can't be a wallflower and then wonder, gee, what happened? I did nothing and it didn't work. Well, let's try doing something. And if you've done something, fantastic. You've done a great job. Thank you. I'm asking you in 2025, do just a little bit more this year than you did last year. Get somebody else involved. If you did one event last year, try doing 2 events this year and invite a friend. So here's what's going on. Talked about this a couple of times. I want you to mark your calendar. It'll be here before you know it. The 2025 Gun Rights Policy Conference by Second Amendment Foundation. That's coming up. It's actually going to be in Salt Lake City, Utah. There's just a hop, skip, and a jump from Southern California. Go to saf.org/GRPC. You can register there. They even have hotel information. It's September 26th through the 28th, and it's really amazing. You have speakers, you have attorneys, activists, influencers, commentators. You have all kinds of Second Amendment leaders in the same room. You'll get a ton of education. Make a ton of connections. I highly encourage everyone who can go to go. I will definitely be there. In fact, I'm taking a party crew, a party van up, and we're gonna do it right. We're gonna have a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. Second Amendment Comedy Night. That's this Wednesday, so it's on the 30th. You only have a couple of days. Second Amendment Comedy Night. Tickets are still on sale. It's only $25 for the cocktail hour and the comedy show. We have 3 professional comedians. It's just going to be us at a private event just for Gun Owners Radio and San Diego County gun owners folks. You don't have to be a member, but the whole group is just going to be the Second Amendment crew, so join us. Tickets are on sale. Just go to sdcgo.org, and it's right there on the front page, the banner. Happy hour doors open at 5:30, and it's right here in the Claremont area. All the information's on sdcgo.org. Bring a date. $25 for appetizers and a comedy show is a really great night, especially with how expensive everything is these days. So please come and join us. There's still tickets on sale. Tabletops and shooting socials. Those are kind of our pillars of activism. We always have tabletops going on. We always have shooting socials going on. Tabletops in particular, we need a lot of help with these tabletops. Tabletops are super easy and a lot of fun. Someone actually picks the venue and they set it up. All the material, the table, everything is already all set up. We just need you to volunteer and help that person out. So you're never going to be alone. We'll give you a free t-shirt. You can work the morning shift. You can work the afternoon shift. It's typically at a gun shop, but not always. There's a bunch of different venues. So you want to go to sdcgo.org/volunteer and just check it out. It's so easy. It's a lot of fun. We just need a few more volunteers to do that. Intro to Communications classes. Okay, so this is the upgraded with the Meshtastic gear. Meshtastic. May 10th, 2025. This is in Oceanside. Take our off-grid comms class, and you get your own Meshtastic device. John, the instructor, has added more training on this cutting-edge technology. Why is Meshtastic valuable? Well, Meshtastic lets you send texts and share location data without cell phone service, Wi-Fi or satellites. It's all through this self-healing mesh network that you control. It's open source, it's low cost, and it's insanely powerful once you know how to use it. Sign up at Gun Owners Radio at our website. It's very, very cool. What are you going to do in case of a disaster? How are you going to communicate with people? We'll learn the skills and get the devices that you need to keep in touch. And this class will help you. Join the Prepared Protector First Aid for Armed Citizens class. Gunfights are rare, but trauma is not. Learn the real-world first aid skills every armed citizen should know. Sign up for the Prepared Protector First Aid for Armed Citizens class on May 17th. This is at our friends Cargo out in El Cajon. This is at their location. And you're going to get some cool stuff. So students are going to take home an IFAC, which is an individual first aid kit. You're going to, with all the critical gear in the IFAC, and it's all hand-picked by expert Erin Pettengill. We interviewed her a couple of weeks ago. She's absolutely fantastic. Retail value, $145. All that for this one low-cost class. Let's see. Get the skills, get the practice, and get the gear you need to be a prepared protector. Sign up at Gun Owners Radio's website. Stay informed, get trained, be part of the community, and we'll see you at the next event. Okay, our guest is Charlie Cook. You may know Charlie from Riding Shotgun with Charlie or a host of other Second Amendment stuff. He's extremely active. He's absolutely fantastic. He's a friend of the show. We love him to death. And he's coming to us live. He's actually on the floor with thousands of his closest friends at the NRA National Annual Meeting. So we're going to talk to him in just a second. This segment is sponsored by Cargo Cases and Rugged Gear Outfitters in El Cajon. Their website is cargostores.com. Go support them, buy something from them, or go see them at 423 Broadway in El Cajon. They have all kinds of cool stuff. If you need to protect your gear while you're on the go, then look no further. Go to Cargo. They have the perfect case for you. They'll customize it. They have all kinds of cool products. If you need it protected and you want it customized, go to Cargo. Did you know that you can get Gun Owners Radio bonus when you buy a case at the store? Cargo will also add a desiccant pack to keep your firearms safe, dry, and rust-free. Other places sell rechargeable desiccants for $15, but they give it to you for free. Just mention Gun Owners Radio. So go in, buy a product, mention Gun Owners Radio, get a free product. Great products, great prices, uncommonly good service. Cases and Rugged Gear Outfitters. Go check them out. Charlie, how are you, my friend?
Thank you guys for having me on. I apologize about all the noise here. When Rich contacted me and said, hey, we have 2 dates, I'm like, well, I'm at NRA one weekend and I'm doing college stuff for my daughter's graduation next weekend. So this is the lesser of two evils.
How exciting.
Yeah, congratulations to your daughter. So you're at the NRA Annual Meeting. You're on the floor. They're doing something new this year as far as influencers, YouTubers, that sort of thing. Talk a little bit about what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So they have this thing this year. They're calling it the Voices of the Second Amendment. And this was the brainchild of one of our good friends, Amanda Suffolk. She said, let's put a radio row in at the NRA annual meetings, and let's change it. I don't want to say make it like the SHOT Show, but let's add something like that so people can see what is the saying, how the sausage is made, right?
Yes.
So there are, I don't know, 15 different people here, 15 different booths, and they have 3 hours. We get 3 hour shifts. So I'm glad that we were able to do this and do it during the time that I have the booth. But Cam Edwards is here, Gun Talk is here, Eye on the Target's here, Tony Simon is here, Frank Johnson, Mike Piwowarski from Arms and Radio. Just a ton of people are here doing a bunch of live shows. It's fantastic, and it's hard to do a show when you see like 3 people walk by and they all want to stop and say hi.
Well, this is yet another, Dakota, I'm sure maybe you have this experience with Charlie too, but this is yet another opportunity for me to live vicariously through Charlie. He's always doing interesting Second Amendment stuff. I'm so jealous. I've been to a couple of NRA shows, and it's like part gun show, part festival, part reunion. It's always a lot of fun. It's very, very cool. And it's in Atlanta this year. And I feel like there is a reinvigorated crowd, when it comes to NRA. I feel like the last few years, people have been wondering, well, gee, what's the future of the NRA? And it feels like, okay, we figured out what the future of the NRA is. And I, for one, am very, very positive about NRA's future, and I'm looking forward to it. What's it like on the floor? That's my feeling. Is that the feeling that's going on the at the show, or what say you?
I think it is. I think there's, with the new 19 of the 28 of the reform candidates elected to the board, I think there's going to be a lot of big changes with the NRA. I certainly hope there's a lot of big changes with the NRA, because they've been struggling in membership. They've been struggling in a lot of different aspects over the last few years, and having Wayne not be the executive vice president anymore, getting Doug Hamlin in there, he really seems like a guy that wants to take care of some business and get things done. And they're making changes right away. Like, he's only been in, I know it's been about a year since last May or so, but this was one of the big changes that they had. They want to get more people involved and let people see that, hey, there's a whole bunch of people out here that are podcast folks. I know some people are really upset about the old guard, as they're calling them, they're being called. I think the old guard, we call them the old guard, but some people are the people that are the old guard call themselves NRA strong. So I think there's less of them. I think there's more reformers that want to make changes and want to make it so that we have a good NRA.
Well, I agree. I've been really impressed by Doug, and I've been really impressed with, some of the staff that have moved up and stepped up efforts. And I remember you and I hope it's okay to talk about a personal, private conversation we had, but I remember a few months ago, Charlie, you and I were talking, and I was telling you, I'm pretty skeptical. I don't know what's going on here. I'm not ready to just go down this road. And a lot has changed for me since then, because I've talked to people, because I've seen action and not just words. I don't know if you remember that conversation when I'm going, guys, I don't know, man. I might just stay out of this and see how it develops. But yeah. I've totally changed my mind.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that you and I and John Petrolino have talked about, how you're a little standoffish with the NRA stuff, and you're like, I don't know. You're a little skeptical about things. Yeah. And I really think that there are going to be some positive changes with the new crew, and very much like a new administration taking over, there's going to be some changes. It's going to take some time. It's not going to happen quickly, but I think it's headed in the right direction. I think it's going to be a lot better for the NRA, and they do need to make it much more active, and they need to bring more people back and get more members and keep growing, keep doing the things that they've been doing for a long time.
Good. Well, what are your goals for being at the show? What would you like to accomplish while you're there?
I just want to survive and make it out alive.
Well, you're at the safest convention / annual meeting ever on the planet in the whole world. So
right, I agree. It's the safest place to be in the country right now. But I drove down from Massachusetts. It took me, the first day I drove 15 hours. I drove from Massachusetts to northern South Carolina, if that's a thing. But I got to South Carolina. One of my friends called me up. I put some video as I was stuck in traffic, and I said, hey, you know what? I've been on the road for 15 hours. She called me up, and she's like, are you okay? Do you need someone to talk to? Are you going to fall asleep? And she convinced me I needed to get a hotel. So I got a hotel in northern South Carolina, and then I drove down to Atlanta yesterday. I came in, I got my credentials, ran into a few people, had lunch, and right away, like by 4 o'clock yesterday, before it even started, I was filming a show with 2 different people yesterday, and then I went back to staying with a friend that lives here. So I went back to his place. I'm like, all right, I know we're having dinner and hanging out and grilling out and whatnot, but I've got videos I need to upload. Like I got some work here I need to do. So today
I saw you stuck in traffic. I was going to suggest that it's probably the perfect opportunity for you to get caught up, on episodes of Gun Owners Radio that you may have missed. But then I realized you were trying to avoid falling asleep, so I didn't recommend that. So, but listen, I wanted to talk to you about the New Jersey CCW thing that's going on. We've talked about it a little bit. Petrolino's talked about it a little bit, and I wanted to get your take and hear from you on it, because I know it's something that you've are knowledgeable about as well.
Yes. So John convinced me that I should get the FID card for New Jersey, because I'm not going to say whether or not I brought shotguns with me when I went down to go do some sporting clays in Pennsylvania and Virginia with him, but I do like to use my own blasters. So he convinced me I need to get the FID card. That was the whole Jersey thing is a whole process. So it's sit through a 26-slide PowerPoint that cost me $50. Then after that, I had to go do digital fingerprints, which, from what I understand, the governor of New Jersey is part owner of the company that does the digital fingerprints. So that cost me
interesting.
No conflict of interest there,
right? That cost me $98. So I'm $150 in. This was in February. When I would get, they do. I think I had to have two references, I think is what it was. And honestly, as soon as they got my information and my money, they messaged my references, because like both my people were like, hey, Petrolino was one of them. He says, hey, I got the recommendation, and I went through and I, everything's fine. Then like 3 days later, I talked to the other friend. I'm like, hey, have you gotten anything from the New Jersey State Police? She's like, oh, I wanted to ask you about that. I'm like, just say everything's fine, right? Every time I would reach out to New Jersey, the first email I would get is very much, don't ask any questions. We'll let you know when we have your stuff. Like nothing. Like it was very cold, very very robotic. And then like 3 days after that, I would get another email that says, oh, well, this is what you're missing this, or the fingerprints weren't going through. So the first email I got is, your fingerprint number was wrong. And I'm like, I didn't do this. This isn't my fault. So I sent them a copy of the receipt, and they corrected it. And then I sat on this for months. Like, this was in February. I think by March, everything was done. March or April. All summer long, I got nothing. And then in September, when I was out in San Diego for Gun Rights Policy Conference, I got an email from them. I said, hey, you know what? I don't want to be a jerk. I just want to check on this, because it's been 6 or 7 months, and I don't know what the time frame is. And, if it goes on after a certain point, do I have to reapply? So they wrote back to me. They're like, oh, yeah, everything's fine. 2 days later, I got an email that said, yeah, you're all set. Here's your digital version of your FID card.
Your file was sitting on Martha's desk, and she was filing her nails, and then
Right.
you woke her up, and she said, "Oh, well, gee, I guess I should do work today." We all voted, and we're going to do work today. Good news.
Right. So then, now that I had this digital copy, it was a file you had to save as a screenshot of on your phone, which seems ridiculous to me. But after I did that, he says, okay, now you're going to have to spend $200 to get the PTC, the permit to carry. So in order to do that, you have to go through what they call the C-Care qualification. And it's not really difficult. It's 10 different shots at 5 different distances from your carry gun of choice. So I used my J-frame and got all the shots. I did a class at the Gun for Hire range, which is in northern Jersey. It cost me $275 for the 2-hour class to go in. And then after I did that, I did that in late November, Joe, like a week before Thanksgiving. And then I sat on that for forever. And then when I went to SHOT Show, I got a notification that said I used the same 2 references, I believe. Everything went through. I got my Jersey permit, and it only took 11 months. And I think it cost me about $625.
Jeez.
Wow. That's crazy that the 2-hour class was almost $300, because the California going rate for our 8-hour class is like $200, $250. So, and that's a full 8 hours.
And this, the instructors made it clear. They're like, look, we're not going to teach you how to do anything. You need to know how to do all this stuff already. We're just going to go through. Here's how you're going to draw the holster out. You don't have to do it from concealment. You don't have to do it from the holster. But here's how you're going to handle the gun. Here's how you're going to do this. You're going to fire 5 shots. You're going to drop the mag out, put a new magazine in, put the holster back in, fire. Take it back out, fire 5 more shots, and they just talk you through everything, which is fine. I think the distances are like, it's the traditional stuff like 3, 5, 7, 10, and 15 yards. And you have to. I know there's a certain score you have to get. I forgot what it was, but I think I only had 2 shots that were a little questionable. But I was shooting a J-frame. Everyone else was shooting Glock 19s and SIG 365s and semi-autos. I'm the old school guy out there.
I was going to say, I like that you're schlepping around a J-frame. He's like, look, New Jersey, I got shotguns and a J-frame, so whatever piece of card that I need to carry around with me so that I can carry this stuff with me. And Charlie, I've said it before, I say it again, you are the realest real man I've ever met in my whole life. I think that's awesome that you're keeping the J-frame alive there. I think that's very, very cool. But let me back up though. Okay, so the first thing you had, let me just kind of, these cards, these certifications you had to get. I'm not totally clear on what it was. Like that first card, the FID, like what exactly, what did that enable you to do? Like why do people get that in New Jersey?
So you have to, I think in order to possess firearms, you have to have permission from the New Jersey government. So in order for me as a non-resident to bring a non-large capacity rifle or shotgun with me, I have to have at least an FID card, or I drive the speed limit, use my blinkers, and don't flip people off when I'm driving. That's the other choice. Right. And legit, after I got the FID card, Petrolino was like, good, now you can bring a shotgun to New Jersey. If you want to bring a handgun, you got to do this other thing and spend, almost another $500, which I'm like, holy moly.
So that FID card, you're just acknowledging, hey, I'm a gun owner. I have guns. I'm probably going to transport them. That's all that's really doing is like it sounds like it's a in-depth, sophisticated registration process, really. Does that kind of sum it up?
I'll tell you the most ridiculous thing to me. You sit through this PowerPoint, you acknowledge that you sat through the PowerPoint. One of the slides that they had for a revolver was a top break revolver. Yeah, a top break revolver, which is not covered in decoding firearms, by the way. So, yeah, this is what they're having. They have these, like, those old pictures that they're like pieces of art where they have the numbers on it and the design. Yeah, it's that of a top break revolver. That's what they have, and it's just the basic easy gun rule stuff. There's nothing special to it. There's nothing about self-defense. There's nothing about when you can and can't shoot somebody or protect yourself or defend yourself, or when you can use or not use a gun. It's not where you can carry one, where you cannot carry one. It's pay us $50 to sit through this PowerPoint, and then we'll let you bring a shotgun or a long gun into the state.
It's just discouragement. It's, hey, we're going to financially discourage you. We're going to make it take a lot of time to discourage you. That's all it really is. And it doesn't really, there's no community safety advancement or anything like that. It's just pure government, screw you, gun owner. That's really what it amounts to. Yeah.
Let's separate you from your money, and then maybe we'll let you carry a gun or have a gun or bring a gun.
And then the second one it sounds like you got a carry permit too, and so New Jersey allows out-of-state applicants to get a carry permit. And you wanted to be able to carry your J-frame on you for self-defense, so you went through the New Jersey's process there. Is that the second one? Carry permit, right?
Yep, absolutely. That's what it is. It's in New Jersey. They call it the PTC, the permit to carry. And so I can now bring my J-frame lawfully as I go through New Jersey. This is what really aggravates me. I've had this since the beginning of January. I haven't gone down to visit Petrolino once yet. So I spent $625 on this. I haven't used it one time.
$600 just to hang out with Petrolino. That guy's an expensive date. I don't know if I'm going to pay that amount. I'm just going to have to go there unarmed. Visiting Petrolino unarmed is dangerous in and of itself. So I don't know.
The nice thing about it is Mrs. Petrolino likes to choose where we go out to eat. So that's always cool.
That's awesome. All right. Well, God, it's unbelievable. I mean, it really truly feels like we're at this time in history. I mean, I got to tell you, pre-Bruin, and that's post Heller, post McDonald, but pre Bruin, it just kind of felt like such a slog. Second Amendment activism was such a slog. And now it really truly feels like things are happening. And I think that elections and, the Bruin decision from the Supreme Court, both those things have moved the Second Amendment movement along at a tremendous pace. So I think we're sitting right in the middle of like these growing pains. I know 5 years from now, 10 years from now, things are going to be a whole lot better, but there's still all this kind of this existing harassment, ridiculousness that people are putting up with. Hopefully all this stuff goes the way of the dodo. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Charlie?
I think that would be great. Like one of the things we often talk about is if they can't, when the anti-gun folks decide or find out that they can't restrict us from having guns, they want to make it more difficult or more expensive.
Yeah.
So like legit $625 to take this so I can have a permit so I can go to Jersey. It's only good for 2 years. So when I renew this in 2 years, it's going to cost me another $200. I don't know if I have to do the qualification, but it's going to cost me another $200. And about a year ago, last year, Petrolina was telling me that the governor in New Jersey wanted to up it to $400 for 2 years. So this makes it so that it's only good for, I'm going to use air quotes when I say this, for rich people, but it's certainly going to be hard for somebody who's, believe me, people ask me, they're like, dude, you're at this event, you go here, you got your show where you travel around the country. How do you afford this? And I say, well, come over and look at my fridge. I have old eggs and moldy cheese. So that's kind of how I get it done.
You probably sell those eggs for a profit, man. Got to tell you. So that's something.
If it didn't expire in September, I might be able to do that.
We're going to start, I think what we're going to do, Dakota, we're going to start, Gun Owners Radio is going to start a GoFundMe just for Charlie's renewal, just so he can remain friends with John Petrolino.
I think maybe we could sponsor a very poor person in New Jersey instead. Maybe we could get one of those 800,000 residents that live below the poverty line.
Yeah, really. All right.
That would be great. I'd love that.
How's the rest of the weekend look for you? What else are you looking forward to at NRA?
It's to me, all this, I'm doing 3 hours of recording shows here, and then I'm doing 2 interviews after I'm done tonight. I think I'm doing 2 interviews tomorrow, maybe one on Sunday morning. I did find out from the friend that I'm staying with that the original Waffle House is 20 minutes away. So
wow.
we might have to make a pilgrimage to the original Waffle House. And I think he said it was in Duluth, Georgia. So that could be on the agenda too.
Loaded. You got to get the loaded tots at the Waffle House.
I only get the oh my gosh, the bacon, egg, and cheese bowl. That's the only thing. I play it safe that way.
There you go. All right. Well, awesome. And tell people how do they see your what you're recording? What's the best way to get a hold of you, follow you, and see your content?
All right, thank you. So the shows that I'm putting out this weekend are actually going to be audio only. I'm calling them pit stops because they're going to be 10 to 15 minutes long. But if you go to WritingShotgunWithCharlie.com, you can go to the Writing Shotgun with Charlie Facebook page. You can go to the Writing Shotgun with Charlie YouTube channel. You can find the podcast version of the show on all of your favorite podcast outlets. AmmoLand runs the shows as well. So I got the Blogger of the Year in 2019 and I didn't write anything. So I had to start writing when I had AmmoLand run the show. And they can find, I have a column on Armed Lifestyle magazine called Writing Shotgun with Charlie. So I go back and revisit people I've had on the show, do another interview with them. And I also write for News 2A. So all I'm doing is just trying to keep up with all the cool people.
That's awesome, man. Thanks so much for taking the time. Thank you for everything that you do, and have fun in Atlanta. And looking forward to hanging out with you in September at Gun Rights Policy Conference in Salt Lake City. That'll be a lot of fun. So thank you so much, Charlie. It
is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. And thank you guys for having me on. You guys are awesome. I love you guys.
All right, brother. Take care.
Thanks.
Right, thanks.
All right, let's talk to Sam. Ready to try to stump my nephew, Dakota?
Yes.
All right, Stump My Nephew. It's sponsored by Seal One, seal1.com. Their website, seal1.com. Cleaning your guns shouldn't take forever. Seal One is the solution, and they smell a lot better than the competition. It's faster, it's easier. You don't want to spend a lot of time sitting there cleaning your guns. You want to get out there living life. You want to be on the range, having fun. They even have an aerosol spray can that you can use, kind of like WD-40. You'd use it, any place you'd normally use WD-40, but it's Seal One. So it's even better, even more convenient. Great for your guns. Seal One, try it today. You can get it off of seal1.com or go down to your favorite gun shop and see if they have it. And if they don't, say, hey, why don't you carry it? One and done with Seal One. Thank you so much for everything you do, Seal One. Thank you for being a sponsor. Sam, how's it going, man?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Good.
Good.
Thank you for joining us. I think we have I don't know. I don't know if you're gonna get this one or not. Sometimes you surprise me.
I have faith. I think he's
faith?
got it.
Yeah.
Let's find out.
Yeah, let's find out. All right, go ahead.
Mike Stavone from Rancho Penasquitos asks, what firearms manufacturer has produced the highest number of shotguns?
Mike from what now?
Rancho Penasquitos. It's a real place.
It's a real place.
Mike from Rancho Penasquitos. And the place name shocked me enough that I don't think I got the question. It was, what manufacturer has produced the largest number of shotguns?
Yes.
Like of all time.
Of all time.
Mm-hmm.
This is potentially a tricky one because there are sort of three big names. Well, 2.5 now. But I remember running across the answer to this while I was researching for a past blog post a few months ago, titled "What the Heck Happened to Big Green?" Actually, it was 2 blog posts. So if I recall correctly, it's Remington who's responsible for it.
Is that your final answer?
I mean, I'm going to say Remington, and then you'll tell me it's Winchester. But yeah, let's go with Remington.
All right. Based on available data, O.F. Mossberg and Sons Incorporated is the firearms manufacturer that has produced the highest number of shotguns in the United States. According to the ATF Annual Firearms Manufacturing and Export Reports, Mossberg was the top shotgun producer in 2021, manufacturing 293,000 shotguns, which accounted for 43.4% of all U.S.-made shotguns that year. Mossberg has held this leading position since at least 2017, with a reported 1.357 million shotguns produced from 2016 to 2020, representing 45.3% of the U.S. domestic shotgun market during that period. The Mossberg 500 series alone has seen over 12 million units produced since its introduction in 1961, with hundreds of variants across different gauges, barrel lengths, and configurations, contributing significantly to Mossberg's total output. Additionally, models like the Maverick 88, 590, and 835 Ulti-Mag further bolster their production numbers. In 2021, 75.5% of Mossberg's total firearm production, which was 388,171 units, consisted of shotguns, highlighting their focus on this category. Remington Outdoor Company is a close competitor with 1,453 shotguns produced from 2016 to 2020, holding a 33.4% market share. The Remington 870, introduced in 1950, has surpassed 11 million units with numerous variants for hunting, sport, and tactical use. However, Remington's broader focus on rifles, which is 58.6% of their production, and their financial struggles, including bankruptcies, likely kept it behind Mossberg in shotgun-specific output.
Interesting.
Other notable manufacturers like Beretta, Browning, and Winchester have significant shotgun production, but their output is still lower than Mossberg's. For example, Beretta produced 104,338 shotguns in the U.S. from 2016 to 2020, and while it has a global presence, its U.S. shotgun production is smaller. Browning and Winchester lack specific model counts in recent data, but are known for diverse lines like the Browning Katori and Winchester Model 12, respectively. though their production volumes don't match Mossberg's scale.
I'm going to say, Sam, I'm going to say that I'm not convinced that Mike Stabone from Rancho Penasquitos, I'm not convinced he provided the answer for the question he asked.
Yeah, I was just thinking that as I was reading it.
So here's what I'm going to do. If you research it and you find out, all time that someone has beat Mossberg, then we're gonna put off the W or the L until next week and see if he's correct or if there's longer history. Although Mossberg's got a big long history,
Yeah,
they've been around for
do.
forever,
Yeah,
but.
they definitely produce the most volume. So if the question was who produces the most right now, then he got me fair and square. If the question was for who has produced the most of all time, then I'll have to look into that per your recommendation.
Yeah,
But
the question was all time.
I could believe it's Mossberg.
Yeah, of all time, you believe that's entirely possible?
Not sure. Again, I'll as you said, I've got a homework assignment now to try and prove one way or the other.
Yeah,
But that was really a good question.
It was a good question. I don't really know. Like, I know a lot of Model 12s were produced. They used them in World War I. They used them in World War II. And they use them today. I mean, it's been around for forever. I don't know if that is enough. That's some depth. The Model 12 has some depth, but I don't know if that one version gives them the width, the breadth.
Yes.
To say, hey, they've really cut into and produced the most amount. But I don't know. I mean, they have other versions of other shotguns, but but it's definitely not like some of these. High end, like, sporting clays or skeet or whatever, like some of these sporting or hunting, like some of these niche ones, they're not producing the masses like Remington and Mossberg are. So that was a good question. But all right, we're gonna have to wait. We can't give you credit. We can't use that against you. We're gonna give you a week to prove this person right or wrong.
One way or the other.
There you go.
Are you smart enough to stump Sam? I bet you have a question or two that'll do it. So head over to gunownersradio.com and scroll down to the Stump My Nephew section and submit your stumper.
Okay, our next guest is Matt Hoff with West Coast Kinetic Solutions. He spent 20 years in the Marine Corps, including special operations. Now he's teaching civilians what he knows about how to make them better shooters. So we wanted to have him on the show and welcome him. This segment, of course, sponsored by Cargo. Check out Cargo Cases and Rugged Gear Outfitters in El Cajon. Go to cargostores.com or go see him at 423 Broadway in El Cajon. Check him out. That's Cargo. Matt, how you doing, man?
Good. How yourself? Doing great.
Very, very good. Dakota and I are very excited about talking to you. I've been looking forward to it. I appreciate you taking the time. So let's go over your background. Tell people where you came from. You spent time in the Marine Corps. Talk about your development there.
Yeah. That's a long or extensive background in the Marine Corps. I did 20 years total time in the special operations community. My first 5 years, I was in the Marine Corps Infantry, where I deployed to Iraq 3 times during the height of the conflict or war, whatever we're calling it these days. And then I transferred over to the SOCOM community, the Special Operations community, where I did 2 deployments to Afghanistan, and then did some instructor time. I did 2 years in what we call like a training cell, where I taught direct action or raids. So I taught combat marksmanship, breaching, CQB, and things like that. And then ended up having to transfer over to North Carolina, where I'm originally from, and train the same subject at the schoolhouse. So taking guys from, not being inside the community and bringing them into the community, as where I was in the training cells, where I focused strictly on the teams, the guys who are getting ready to deploy and stuff like that.
I was going to say, perfect opportunity. I want to talk about some lingo.
Yes.
Maybe you can help me out. So first off, what does special operations actually mean? Like, what does that mean? When someone says they're in special operations, what does that signify or indicate?
So that's very diverse, right? So special operations has a lot of rabbit holes. right? So when you look at the SOCOM community, each branch has its own internal portion to it. For example, the Navy has NSW, Navy Special Warfare, or your Navy SEALs. And there's also a bunch of different other categories inside NSW. For example, the Army, they have Army Special Forces, right? And there's a bunch of different categories inside that. They've got Green Berets, Army Rangers, and so on and so forth. Whereas in the Marine Corps, we have our Special Operation Command, where we call it MARSOC, Marine Special Operations Command, and we have what we call the Raiders, right? And so inside that, we have like our different lanes as well. But specifically, when we talk about the Marine Raiders, they're the ones that go out doing all the action to go behind enemy lines, train partner forces, stand up, secret militias and things of that nature, and then do like kind of the direct action, right? So when we finalize or fix or find, the head of the snake, the lead bad guy, at that point in time, we go ahead and prosecute that target. And a lot of times, special operations is very oriented or surrounded around terrorist operations or counterterrorism operations.
Terrorism, that term has even broadened in the last 25 years, to include a lot of things. And by the way, so let's go back half a step to special forces. I think people use special forces or overuse special forces. My understanding is the term special forces really is only Army. Like there is no Marine special forces. The Marines have special operations. There's no Navy special forces. The Navy has special operations. Is that correct? Special forces is just Army, correct?
Correct. So that's just kind of more or less like we call it like maybe a badging or a title to it. So when we talk about Army Special Forces, there's multiple categories. You got like Delta Force, and they go by other names and stuff like that now. But when we talk about Army Special Forces specific, Navy SEALs and MARSOC Marine Raiders, we all fall in what's called like a branch of like White SOF is what we call it. And it's kind of like your tier 2 level of special operations. We have to have the ability to conduct joint operations and speak the same lingo and do the same actions together to conduct operations.
And SOCOM, talk about SOCOM. What SOCOM, my understanding of SOCOM, correct me if I'm wrong, yep, is that some of these units like Delta Force and Dev Group or SEAL Team 6, they report up through a different channel, and that channel goes up into SOCOM, whereas the rest of the military goes up through like the Secretary of Defense. And it's kind of a different chain of command and a different source of funding and a very different mission. Is everything I said accurate, or is there anything you want to correct or add?
You nailed it on the head. That's very accurate.
So talk about SOCOM. What is SOCOM's mission?
So SOCOM's mission. So we have multiple different lanes, I guess you could say, and I don't want to divulge too much, and it kind of gets sensitive, and they say, hey, you're out now, so you're not really held to that same standard and stuff like that. And
yeah,
that's why
give us the information that you'd find on Wikipedia. You know what I mean? We don't need I don't want to get investigated. Just like whatever the public kind of elevator speech on SOCOM. What do civilians know that SOCOM does as far as their mission?
I think the biggest thing that they need to focus on in regards to their, like, hey, what is SOCOM's mission, is anything that's not in your conventional understanding of like, hey, we're just going to go to war, right? Your conventional side is just going to go to war, where special operations community is more focused on any special mission that's not your standard operation. And that can be, counterterrorism operation, counterinsurgency operations, unconventional warfare, direct action. Like conventional forces do not have the authorities to conduct direct action, i.e. raids on high value targets in sensitive areas and stuff like that. But we mainly focus on counterterrorism operations.
So going back to you and your journey, did you enlisted in the Marine Corps out of high school, or what was talk specifically about what you did for the Marine Corps?
Yeah, so right out of the Marine Corps, right out of high school, I was the type of guy that signed up immediately. I always knew I was the type of guy that was going to join the military. I grew up wanting to be John Rambo, the whole gambit, right? I wanted to jump out of airplanes and go chase after bad guys. I've always wanted to do that. And when I was in high school, 9/11 happened. It made me become even more patriotic, right? I became huge on wanting to serve my nation. right? That was like one of my biggest goals. I was like, hey, I want to be one of those guys that people look up to, knowing that like, hey, he's going to go protect us, right? And as I went through my military career and growing up, I realized there's only a certain amount of people that have the ability to do that, right? And I felt like I was one of those people. I have the ability to do that, right? And so I wanted to ensure that, like, if I had that ability, I want to take on that responsibility. I wanted to make sure I was able to do so. So I joined the military, and in my military career, I constantly did what I could to progress in my military career to kind of like ensure that I was providing that security blanket, which I thought was my place in society.
Well, so going through high school, what told you that, what was that internal voice? Why did you have that internal voice that said, hey, this is me, I can do that? Like, what was that?
So I think there's a lot of things that go with that. I think it's like a mental portion to it, right? I kind of felt that I had like a warrior inside, there's that warrior spirit that you look for, you find. And I knew I was an athlete. I could compete, right? I found myself very competitive. I was athletic. And it's not that I thought I was better than anybody, but I could most definitely see moments where I could do something and somebody couldn't, right? And I found that like, hey, I might not be a professional athlete, my goals aren't to become, a rock star baseball player or something of that nature, but I was still competitive. I wanted to play. I wanted to play with the top boys. And it kind of led down this path of like, hey, there's people who play sports who are enjoying life. And then there was people who couldn't, participate in extreme, sports or being athletic and stuff like that. So it attracted me, right? And I kind of found this balance, right? At the same time, I was a wrestler, I was aggressive, I did these type of sports, and it kind of built me up and built that, mentality as a teammate, and the kind of the warrior spirit moving forward of like, hey, I had a position inside society and I wanted to give back, right? And that was the mentality. I wanted to give back. I just couldn't help it, right? It was a part of me.
What was the toughest thing? You were in the Marine Corps for 20 years?
Correct.
What was the toughest thing in those 20 years? What was what was your toughest hour or your toughest 15 minutes, or, you know what I mean? Like, what happened to you during that 20 years where you thought, man, this is the absolute toughest, worst thing I have gone through, and I can't believe I made it through?
Man, that's a tough question, because it had a lot of those breaking points, and that was like part of the growth in my military career that I was talking about, that I constantly kept striving, because I always hit that ceiling. There was always a new place that I'd hit. When I first joined the Marine Corps, my first 5 years, I looked at boot camp. Our basic training was kind of like one of the most challenging things I'd ever experienced, because I had gone from being a high school kid to now working with full-on adult grown men who also were my instructors, who had experienced combat and now were overseeing me and challenging me and constantly pushing me. And then I went into the infantry and I saw combat, and that was like a new ceiling that I had hit, right? And then I decided to go to the assessment selection. And I would say assessment selection is, probably one of the top things that I had to do that really pushed me to my limit psychologically, mentally, and physically. So that combination was maxed out, if you would. But then what was interesting is that he had pushed me to a new limit, and I had found myself what we call an ITC, or individual training course, whereas that's where you get the training and education to become this elite MARSOC Marine Raider. And again, it was another ceiling that it took me to, right? And selection is what got me there. Right. And I had to work myself up to selection, and the selection got me there as well. And then the combat portion of it, as I grew into these leader positions, these leadership roles, were all new challenges the entire way throughout my military career, because I experienced combat in Iraq as an individual was challenging, as a young man was challenging. And then I did these things as a leader in Afghanistan, where I took, Afghan troops and Marines and soldiers, and I was overseeing these people, and I was leading them through these combat, operations. And the mental aspect and the physical aspect I had to take on to kind of prove myself and ensure that they were success, and making some extreme sacrifices, and, putting myself out there were different. They're all different challenges, I don't know if I could ever pinpoint one that was, harder than the other. But I would have to say they have their own lanes. I would say combat in Afghanistan as a leadership was more challenging than any combat I had experienced. And then in the training world, I would have to say, assessment selection, or ITC, was probably the most physically and mentally challenging thing, more physically than mentally, than anything else. So, kind of putting those in two different subjects, if you would, but both were extreme, right? And I would say that, the training helped me get to the portion where it prepared me as a person for that. But, at the same time, giving me that leadership and understanding, but it's not as realistic as it can be in training, and then experiencing it in the real world. And some things that you can't train for, especially in combat, you can't train for everything, right? You do your best. And then when you're put in charge of these people that can't speak the same language as you, and you're trying to convince them to basically go hunt down bad people and train them and give you every tool that you have, to prepare them for combat. And then when they get into it and that friction sets in, the reality sets in, you being there to be able to set the example and push beyond that, so they have something to look at and emulate, and to thrive through that, is a different challenge than being a student and be exposed to the most simulated combat training the world has to offer. Was another challenge on its own. So I was constantly running into barriers, I would say, throughout my military career.
It's so interesting to me. I ask special operations. I through the show and other avenues, I've interviewed at least a couple dozen special operations guys, at least, probably more than that. Guys that were SEALs, guys that were Green Berets, guys that were MARSOC, all kinds of Rangers, all kinds of different special operations. And I never served in the military, and I think that civilians who've never served in the military, when we ask that question, like what was hardest or what was scariest or what was your most challenging, whatever version of that question, I think we all expect to hear, some kind of, version of, well, getting shot at was probably the worst thing. And I've never heard that answer. All special operations guys talk about how challenging, how physically and mentally challenging the training was, and they talk about leadership challenges like you did when you're describing leading the locals in Afghanistan, that kind of thing. And I think that is a testament to just how good and challenging military training is, particularly for special operations guys. I really, truly, I don't think I've ever heard, a real, like a combat story. Like, well, I was most afraid during this point in combat. It seems like by the time, it's always like a training thing or training, exercise or mission or whatever. By the time you guys get into combat, you guys, it sounds like you're so well trained, you're so well prepared, you're surrounded by people that are the absolute best in the world. It's just you guys perform so well under that immense pressure because of the hard training you've had. And it's interesting to me how often that comes up when I talk to special operations guys. I think that's a testament to the to yourself and the people that came before you and all the training that's been put there by the military. We see it in movies, but I don't think people fully understand just how important that training is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, our U.S. military, and I like to beat on my chest, the Marines specifically, but I think we do bring the most realistic training that can be provided to our troops, right? I think we do a pretty freaking good job because, I've been behind the curtain to kind of stage those things. And, I try to bring as much realism to it as possible. But I always tell the guys, we can't train for everything. We just have to be prepared to rise to those occasions and just be as prepared as possible. And that's what we do our best.
And
but
now I was going to say, now you train civilians. You're a firearms instructor here in San Diego. Yep. Talk about how your background helps you teach and deliver curriculum through West Coast Kinetic Solutions.
Right. So going kind of back to my career, right, throughout the military and how I got to this point, So when I was transitioning out, or I saw the end of the tunnel basically coming up, I had to prepare for like what I was going to do, and always had the mindset that I was going into law enforcement and or homeland security, something of that nature, still like serving the country, because that was my goal. I want to still be giving back to whatever community I felt like I belonged to. And at the time it was broad. It was like I don't know where I'm going to end up across the United States, but I'm going to still be serving wherever I end up. My nation, locals, whatever it may be. But unfortunately, as I noticed that coming to the tail end of my military career, I realized that I was running out of time of being operational or being able to wear some type of uniform or actually be in those type of positions, I guess you say operational positions. And so I end up taking on a contract position, like what we call a skills bridge or a fellowship or internship in my last 6 months of my military career, because I knew that I couldn't do those law enforcement or those law enforcement positions in even homeland security and stuff like that. So I took on this contract position where I was training Marines on Camp Pendleton, and I was in hopes that I would get a job with this company because they said they were expanding. And it ended up falling out. But what I realized when it came back to me is like how much I love teaching people, right? Training people. I was like, oh my God, I still love this, doing this, right? And so I realized that I can't be law enforcement or I can't be on the border where I really want to be conducting operations. But what's the last stance? Where's the last line of self-defense or whatever it may be? And I look at the civilian populace, and I think I can relate a lot because amongst the SOCOM community, it's our job to have the ability to not only train but also educate, right, other partner forces and even our own military, right? So with my instructor experience and my experience training locals in other nations, they can't even speak my language, or I can't even speak their language barrier being there. I feel like I have a good handle on how to create programs and how to structure training and connect with people and build them and reach the goals that they desire and need, especially when we start talking about 2A, right? When we think about that aspect of things, one of the reasons I put solutions in my company title or name is because I realized in Southern California, there's many struggles for people to have their rights and find the training and find locations and find instructors and funding, right? Financially, how do they pay for these things, right? That's a part of why I put that in my company name, is I want to focus on ensuring that I find a way to kind of bridge the gap for everyone to get the training that they need and desire, right? If you're finding a training site, because I know California, the EPA is doing everything they can to prevent, gun ranges for even existing, creating extra laws and extra steps, and for someone just to have the right to carry a firearm, right? I want to help solve that problem as well, those challenges, and combat that, and at the same time, give them the training they deserve, right? And at a decent cost, because it kind of upsets me on how much things cost so much nowadays. And I feel like that's another struggle, and it upsets me. Like if somebody they feel like they can't find a path or a way to defend themselves because of a financial reason, right? And that kind of segues into my selling point in regards to the membership that I created, and is to create that sustainability and the ability to financially fund themselves to pay for things. Because you look at like CCW and cost of training nowadays, it's unreal here in San Diego. It's unreal. And I think that's, not appropriate for the average person living their normal lives looking for courses and training and education. And so it's like a big part of that solutions that we talked about, like how, my military career has gone from where it was in the very dynamic world to, training and understanding the average Joe that's on the street that get the minimum training they need.
Awesome. That is very cool. I agree with everything. It is kind of crazy how, growing up, you always heard, the old guys who are probably younger than I am now, but back then they were the old guys say, gee, back in my day, a cup of coffee was whatever. And they were talking about like 20, 25 years prior. Now, back in my day when things were cheaper was like 4 years ago. Things have gotten so expensive. And I agree with you, your ability to defend yourself, whether it's buying, the tool, the self-defense tool that you need, whether it's getting a carry permit or it's getting the training you need, it's gotten so expensive. And I appreciate how conscious you are of that. I think that's very, very cool. Okay, so if somebody wants to train with you, if somebody wants to get a hold of you and learn from you, where do they go?
I think one of the best places to reach out to us is on social media, right? That kind of seems to be the way ahead for our current society's culture and moving forward. Instagram, our handle is West Coast Kinetic Solutions, West Coast being one word, and then underscore kinetics, and then underscore solutions. And then same thing for Facebook, right? So we go by West Coast Kinetic Solutions on Facebook. Those are probably the two most, founding, spots to find us, because I think everybody uses social media platforms at this point in time. And then you can just Google us as well. Like, Google's like a good tool. Everybody, uses that tool every day, I think, on a daily basis on how to search or answer questions. Like, so if you're looking for me, I try to make it as easy as possible. I even put my cell phone on all those locations so you can contact me directly, because I love hearing the stories. I love hearing the struggles. And I tell people when I'm on the phone with them, like, what is your struggle? What is your challenge? Why can't you get to the goal that you want? And I'm going to find it for you. It be a training spot, it being consistent, it being, firearm, you need, answers on what's the best to carry. My background on conducting low vis operations overseas, I have, multiple different experiences in that. I can kind of advise those type of things. I give that solution there, right? I do that for law enforcement and civilians. So, when it comes to these challenges, I offer that to everybody. A lot of people ask me, like, well, I can't afford, I don't want to put company names that are out there, but like, some of them are $650 for a CCW training course. And I'm like, that's outrageous. That's more than the gun that they purchased. I was like, no, you have the right. We're going to find a way. And one of them offers the membership. I'm like, give me $50 and we'll find a place and we're going to go train. And that's kind of my mentality. And that's how I remember.
So sounds like beginner, intermediate, or advanced. It sounds like pistol, rifle, shotgun. You offer it all. You offer it at an affordable rate, and you're looking forward to working with folks in the Southern California or anywhere. But you're here in the Southern California area, so look you up on social media. Reach out to you directly, and again, that is Matt Hoff with West Coast Kinetic Solutions. Matt, thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for your commitment to the Second Amendment, and thanks for your time today. That was super interesting.
Oh, this was great, Mike. I really appreciate you. Thanks for having me on. I think everything you guys are doing. You guys are doing the bigger footstep here, fighting all lanes of conflicts that we have with the 2A rights. So I can't thank you guys enough.
Well, thank you for the kind words, man. Excellent. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon, Matt. So no bull, just straight shooting on today's hottest gun and political topics. It's time for our straight shooter segment. Okay, the first thing I wanted to talk about is, about a couple months ago now, a few months ago, the beginning of the year, you remember we talked about David Hogg, anti-gun guy, David Hogg, and how he was voted onto the Democratic National Committee, which basically means that he is a part of the leadership of the Democratic Party. And I remember at the time thinking to myself, I don't know if I even want to talk about this. How much does this really, really matter? But I wanted, he's absolutely an extremist when it comes to guns. Yeah. He's an extremist on a lot of political things, but we mostly know him from his extremist views on guns. But at the time, I wanted to make the point that, hey, I don't think we should be afraid of this. This guy's so incompetent and so extreme. He is not going to make the DNC better. I think he's going to make it worse. Mm-hmm. And we talked a lot about that. I think in just a couple months here, my opinion has been proven true. He came out a week ago and said, hey, my group has organized and we've raised $20 million, not to fight Republicans, but to try to go after Democrats. So he's got this position on the Democratic National Committee where his whole job is to figure out how Democrats can get elected and be more successful. That's the scope and purpose, and that's what he is supposed to be doing. Instead, he's using his own organization to go after Democrats that the DNC has already elected. And the idea is he wants to go to safe Democrat districts, so Democrats or districts where Democrats already have a seat, and there's 60-70% of the voters are Democrat. In other words, they're safe. They're probably going to get reelected. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't like them because they're not extreme enough. So he's going to find a candidate to run who's also a Democrat, who's even more extreme, who's even more anti-gun, and he's going to run them against this person, in this safe Democrat district. So the DNC spent all this time, effort, and money getting someone elected, getting them into a safe seat. I could even argue that they've helped make that area a safe seat. They've helped, make that area more pro-Democrat, and he's going to spend his time, effort, and money undoing what they've already done.
I kind of love it. Let's let the infighting happen.
There you go. What do they say when in a circular firing squad? Just let them go. You don't get in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what's happening. Everybody that's supported him, everybody that's put him in a position of power, great, go for it, do it.
The DNC is having rough times as it is. Let's let them do what they want to do.
Well,
they're doing a good job running themselves into the ground.
Yeah, and the other point I really wanted to make here, it's a point I've made, but this helps illustrate it. The parties, really any political party, is not there to stand up for your principles. That is not their function. They lure you in by alluding to that, and maybe you could make the case that in broad strokes, they generally stand up for certain subjects. And maybe some parties do a little bit better job of it, but the reality here is they do not stand up for your principles. If you think to yourself, hey, these are the 5 things that are important to me, so I'm going to get involved in a party to help support those 5 things. The Second Amendment is important to me, so I'm going to get involved in a party to help advance the Second Amendment. Wrong move. They do not support your individual ideas, principles. And that's not necessarily a criticism. That's just the harsh reality. Because here's David Hogg, who said, hey, I have these extreme principles and thoughts and opinions. I'm going to get it. He's as involved in a party as you can get. I mean, he's at the national leadership level.
Yeah.
And he's saying, okay, great. Now I'm going to use this position. Now I'm going to stand up for principles and things that I believe in. And the DNC and everybody that supports the DNC is wetting their pants over it, saying, hey, wait a minute. You're going to spend money trying to get your principles into our party? How dare you? There's not a party out there that would react any differently.
No.
The Republican Party, the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, all these parties, that is not their job. I used to describe it, I'd say, hey, if you go to, for example, if you go to a party and say, hey, I want you to be a Second Amendment organization, and then you're frustrated, it's like going to Burger King drive-through and ordering lasagna. Well, they don't make lasagna. That's not their job. It's not what they do. But they're a food place. Yeah, but not that food. That's not what they do. That's not what their purpose is. So I wanted to make those 2 points. I hope they keep him. I hope he stays right where he's at, and I hope he collects every dollar of that $20 million, and I hope that he targets all these. I hope that he absolutely, ruins everybody's day on the anti-gun side and does exactly what he says he's going to do. I think it's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I think one side of this that is interesting is that a lot of, and I'm not really affiliated with a party. I think that something that is hilarious to me is that so many people that I know who have been Democrats their whole life and who believe in a lot of the, same things as the Democratic Party says they believe in, feels like the Democratic Party has left them. They haven't left the party. They feel abandoned by their own party because their party has gone further and further left. Right. And people like David pushing it even further left is not going to do anything but get more folks to decide that this isn't the party that they can align with anymore.
Every reason that they just lost in November, he's going to double down on.
100%.
Actually, I have a video of some of his comments. Let's play that video real quick.
He's being paid to run against other Democrats. I think it's an outrage. I don't know if I have standing, but I might give the DNC $10 and sue him. He's a contemptible little twerp. If you ask me.
The well-known Democratic strategist James Carville said in response to this announcement of this plan that you have to primary Democrats, he said that the DNC should sue you and called you, quote, a contemptible little twerp. What is your reaction to that?
Try it. That is my reaction. I would also say James Carville has not won an election since before I was born. I think it's time to have new leaders in our party that are ready to meet this moment, because a lot of the people that are most critical of this plan are the same ones that had $2 billion to win an election and still lost. So I think the experts can save it, because it's time for some new ideas.
Now, I got to tell you, very rarely do I agree with James Carville, but he's absolutely spot on here. He is a contemptible little twerp. I 100% agree with that. I think that's one of the best political analyses I've ever seen. So thank you, James Carville, for that. I also want to point out something really interesting. If you go on Carville's Wikipedia page, he actually has a long history of doing exactly what David Hogg is doing.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious.
And I want to read one thing here. This is 2022. It's not ancient history. This is 2022. It's 2 years ago, 3 years ago. In 2022, Carville led the Penn Progress Super PAC, which spent the entirety of its funds in support of Connor Lamb's bid for the U.S. Senate seat vacated by retiring Senator Pat Toomey. Lamb worked closely with Carville's Super PAC and participated in donor calls Carville arranged. Now, why is that significant? Well, John Fetterman, who is the Senate. I mean, first off, Carville completely lost that. But John Fetterman actually won. He is a self-described Democratic socialist. But I thought it was interesting that he basically is a little different in that he didn't hold the seat,
Right.
But basically, the same thing. He's got a long history of doing that. And he even, Carville himself retweeted news on coverage on Fetterman and labeled him a, quote, silver spoon socialist, which I thought was interesting. So, I don't know. Feels like Carville was projecting there a little bit, He basically saying, hey, the thing that I do, that's the thing that I do, not the thing that you're supposed to be doing. So, anyway. Any thoughts on that, Sam?
I don't know what the heck the DNC was expecting putting David Hogg in a position of power. It's like they're going, oh no, we put a single issue activist in an important managerial position and he's still focused on that issue. How could this be happening to us? How could we have allowed this to happen?
Yeah.
I don't get it. I think I know what they were hoping would happen, but I don't know how they failed to anticipate this.
A little short-sighted.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. One of the things I try to do in the political world is figure out, is this malfeasance or incompetence? And I think it's an important distinction. If somebody's doing something to you or to someone else, or they're doing it in the political world, are they incompetent or is it malfeasance? And I think that David Hogg has both. I think he's 50-50. I think it's malfeasance and incompetence, and it's pretty funny. Everything that guy touches turns to absolute garbage. And I wish him the best of luck, man. Go for it. Destroy the anti-gunners. Destroy the kind of anti-gunners and support the really, really anti-gunners, because all that's going to end up happening is he's not going to. He might pull off a victory here and there, but all he's going to do is he's just going to drain them and bloody and blacken an eye, and it's going to be awesome. So, okay, next thing I wanted to talk about. So, the Trump administration, last week we talked about how FPC said, hey, we have a couple of things. We have a couple of ideas that we need you to follow up on as an administration. There is a lot of Second Amendment, pro-Second Amendment noise coming from the administration, and they've done a couple of good things. There doesn't seem to be a lot of leadership or direction, and FPC wanted to help provide that and basically suggested that they install that. And this week, I wanted to talk about how they're putting together, the Trump administration is putting together a Second Amendment task force. Attorney General Pam Bondi, and she had a statement regarding the creation of Second Amendment task force. It's very, very short. I just want to read it to you real quick. Let's see. Quote, the prior administration placed an undue burden on gun owners and vendors by targeting law-abiding citizens exercising their Second Amendment rights. The Department of Justice's new Second Amendment task force will combine department-wide policy and litigation resources to advance President Trump's pro-gun agenda and protect gun owners from overreach. I think that is an important thing. I think that it's encouraging. I think that they've maybe received FPC's message, and their I'm going to say their constructive criticism, and basically said, hey, you guys need some kind of vision. You need some kind of direction. It's good that you want to do these things, and there are some things that have been bubbling up, but we need some kind of leadership. So you guys all need to be on the same page. And it looks like this is an attempt to do that very thing, which I'm encouraged by. I mean, Trump I still think that Trump can be described as the most pro Second Amendment president we've maybe ever had, or at least in modern times. Now, that's a statement on Trump, but it's also a statement on all the other presidents we've had. There wasn't a real high bar to achieve, but now that he's in, let's do this thing, man. We got a lot of people saying the right things. There have been a couple of actions that have been taken. Let's bring her on home. We got about 3.5 more years. There's a lot that can be done in 3.5 years. I'm glad to see Pam Bondi, who I'm still on the fence about. I'm not totally frustrated with her, but I'm not totally sold on her as Attorney General. But she seems to be there to stay unless something big happens. In the political world, who knows? But I think this is good. It's about time. Let's get this done. Let's wipe out every single thing that Biden did that was anti-Second Amendment. Everything. I don't want one thing left over from his legacy. Let's look back even into Obama's administration. Let's reevaluate the entire federal government, and let's make sure that the things that can be done from the executive branch get done. And then let's have the executive branch provide the leadership in Congress to undo the things that require a law. And let's get some really true reform, some true protections for gun owners. And, let's set the ship right, I think is encouraging. So what are your thoughts, Dakota?
Yeah, I'm interested to see who ends up on the task force. I know she mentioned in the statement that she's going to be the chair of it, and the associate attorney general will be, I think, the vice chair. And then it's going to have people from the ATF, from the FBI, from the attorney general's office, a bunch of different people. So I'm interested to see who ends up on the task force and whether or not they're willing to put aside their personal beliefs and do the task of the task force, which is, I guess, enforcing the Constitution, right?
Enforcing the task.
Yeah. So
or come to the task force with the right personal beliefs.
Right, exactly, yeah. Maybe we should demote some people who don't have those beliefs. But I'll be interested to see who ends up on it, and then I'll kind of have more of an opinion.
It's fair. Sam, what do you think, bud?
I remain skeptical, but I will refrain from making a strong statement one way or the other until we have some time to see results. I think we've already seen some discouraging things coming from the current administration when it comes to protections that may suggest, again, I'm not saying firmly one way or the other, but something.
No. Well, I agree. Skepticism is important. You guys are making me sound.
Bring about actual action.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I would like to see what actually happens. Words are fine. Press releases are great. You guys are making me feel all Pollyanna and pie in the sky. And gee golly, I can't wait. But I don't know.
Free Tate Adamiak and then we'll talk, right?
Yeah, really, right? Well, I think that I think you can look at this as glasses half full, and I think you can look at this as glasses half empty. Like I said, every politician, every bureaucrat, the best thing to do is to treat them like an underperforming employee. If you treat them worse, if you treat them better, you're making a mistake. But if you kind of go, that's good, but let's see how it goes, that's probably the best thing to do. But it's encouraging, and I appreciate FPC's leadership. I appreciate everything that everybody's doing. A lot of people ask me, who are the good organizations? There's not a bad organization out there. FPC's wonderful. NRA, they're 2.0, everything that's coming up, wonderful. Gun Owners of America, Gun Owners of California, wonderful. CRPA, wonderful. San Diego County Gun Owners, wonderful. Everybody that's working towards your Second Amendment, support them. Support them. We're not, this isn't high school. Don't pick a clique, and be the mean girl and gossip about the other organization. Everybody's playing a part. Everybody's doing their thing. There's Jews for the Preservation of the Second Amendment, wonderful. All these organizations, Second Amendment Foundation, wonderful. Support all these guys. Nobody's going into this with anything but a passion for your Second Amendment rights, to support them all. So thank you all, everybody, for your leadership. Thank you for volunteers. And speaking of which, we have an announcement. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate your time, man. Talk to you next week, and look forward to hearing what the answer to your homework is. So, big
Thanks
announcement.
for having me on, as always.
You bet, bud. We are starting, Gun Owners Radio is starting the Pew Pew Crew. The Pew Pew Crew. I love it. That's Gun Owners Radio's membership program. Welcome and thank you to the founding members, Mike White, Thor, I hope I get his name right. I just know him as Thor Waldall, and John Little. You guys are the founding Pew Pew Crew members, and we appreciate it very much. So what you get a behind the scenes content, you get members only content, and you get exclusive perks. So we do a lot of content here. We put out shows every week. We put out clips every week or every day, shorts that are all completely free. None of that's going away. But what we're doing is we're adding this membership program where you'll get everything that you get for free, and then you'll get additional content and additional perks. So what does your membership do? Well, it helps us grow the show. We just hit 10,000 members, which is wonderful. I got to tell you, I'm so happy. I'm so elated by that. It is such a big milestone, but we're nowhere near ready to stop. 10,000 is just a nice big milestone. I can't wait till we get to 10 million. So it's gonna help us grow the show. It's gonna help grow the Second Amendment movement, and get us more supporters, so that we can do everything that we need to do at Gun Owners Radio to fight and restore and defend your self-defense rights when it comes to the Second Amendment. We're going to be able to get the word out. We're going to be able to organize the community. We're going to be able to play our part effectively and help get some great things done. So that's what it does, and that's why it's important. So check it out. To join, you go to gunownersradio.com and look for the graphic that says Pew Pew Crew, and then click on that, and you can join. Right, Rich? Did I explain that correctly?
Or just go to the YouTube channel and click join.
Or just go to our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/gunownersradio. If you're watching this, you're probably already on the YouTube channel. And then you can just click join right there. So there you go. Pew Pew Crew. Looking forward to growing it. Fantastic. Well, that's our show. Appreciate everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching. Awesome job, Dakota. Thank you so much, Sam. Alicia will be back next week. She is off doing big, important things. Rich on the board. Thank you so much. Producer Rich, awesome job. Thank you all for listening. See you next week. Hope this was helpful.